Alright, now we can talk about what we call the internet. I see this is week 9, and we'll talk about the internet and then the World Wide Web and then e-commerce. Now, what is the internet? First, we'll talk about what we call networks. Hopefully, you still remember from week 6 where we learned about the different types of networks. For example, local area network or wide area network, and etc. Now, what happens in a network is that you will have lots of computers, or generally we can call nodes because it can be other than computer, right? So we have lots of nodes connected to each other, right? And they're connected by way of different communications channel. It can be wired, it can be wireless. Now, we can also bear in mind that these computers can be so further apart from each other, right? It can be like, for example, 2 kilometers away, 50 kilometers away, 200 kilometers away, several thousand kilometers away, for example, right? So it becomes what we call a wide area network. Right? If and when we combine all computers in the world together, meaning all of the computers which are interconnected together, right? Then we have the internet, right? Which is the largest ever wide area network, right? So what is the internet, right? The internet is the physical interconnection of computers and nodes, right? It is what we call, or what I call, the network of networks, right? Where computers from all over the world are connected with each other is the physical infrastructure, right? The web is a different thing, but we'll talk about the web later. Now we'll talk about the internet. Now, the nice thing about the internet is it's interoperable. That means if you're using a Samsung smartphones and an HP laptop, which is my case, and an Epson printer, for example, and a D-Link router, right, and a TM modem, right, you can still use the internet by way of interconnecting these devices together, and you can still get your Samsung smartphones to send WhatsApp messages. You can still use your HP laptop to use the internet and surf all your favorite websites and go to Facebook and stalk your friends, right? You can still do all of these things using the internet. That means it is interoperable, regardless of brand, regardless of make, as long as the computer can handle networking, right? Meaning it has some form of network interface card, it will be able to use the internet, right? Now, the internet is vast. It is very big, as you can see here. It is the largest wide area network, the single largest network in the world. And so, what happens is that inside the internet, we have lots of different materials, lots of different media. We have pictures, we have text, we have videos. In other words, we have so much things on the internet. The world of the internet itself might be larger than the real world in terms of content, meaning we might have put our thoughts there and forgotten about it in real world, but it's still there on the internet, right? So the internet is otherwise known as the cyberspace. And like I pointed out earlier, the cyberspace can be greater than the real world, the real space. But anyway, we'll talk about, since it's so vast, we'll have to have some kind of a system to send data from one point to another. And this system is simply called TCP and IP. Basically, when you use the internet, you would send and receive data from one point to another. You might receive a picture, but you won't receive a picture in one go like that. One picture goes from one point to another. No. In reality, the picture will be broken down into small pieces, and that is done by the TCP part. It's packeting meaning it chops the picture into small pieces and put them into what we call packets, small packets, So even if the communications channel is very thin, very narrow, the packet can still go through, right? Packetting. And then we have IP, which is what we call for addressing. What the hell am I writing? Addressing, right? So IP is for addressing purposes, and so we have this thing called the IP address, which is basically a set of numbers divided by dots, right? And you can go from a minimum of 0.0.0.0 to a maximum of 255.255.255.255. So this is the minimum most, this is the maximum most. If you have a number which is larger than 255, then it's not valid. For example, let's say I give this IP address 1.2.5.271. This is not a this is not a valid IP address because one of the numbers exceeded 255, right? So it must be within that range, 0 until 255. Now, with regards to using the internet, needless to say, we will need some service providers. You'll be able to see inside your slides that there is some service providers that provide the internet backbone, meaning to say that connects, for example, countries and regions together, right? And then there are service providers that gives you connection to the internet, meaning gives you access to these backbones, which is what we call the last mile technology, right? So we call these internet service provider, and OSP is online service provider, right? So this is network service provider, which is you can say the companies that first started the internet, that were first there when the internet first started, right? Then we have companies like TM and etc. Online service providers are different from internet service provider in the sense that it gives you access to the internet as well as access to exclusive content that they build themselves, right? So that's the difference between ISP and OSP. For example, if you use OSP, you might have things like you can use their exclusive what do you call it, exclusive email, maybe exclusive content in news, certain services like chatting or whatnot, right? So internet service provider and online service provider are the types of providers that will give you access to the internet by way of different methods. For example, you can use dial-up, you can use DSL, right? Or you can use cable. So you can actually read through these further within your slides. It should be slide number 8 if I'm not mistaken, where you can actually refer to these, right? Meaning the kinds of services for you to access the internet, right? So that is the intro to week 9, which is internet, World Wide Web, right, and e-commerce.